millions of dollars and takes months of rigorous safety training to build a secure AI. But it takes less than $200 and just a few hours to strip those safeguards away and create a weaponized model. Welcome to the debate. We're looking at a stark reality today: the immense inherent dangers of open source artificial intelligence. We really want to hear exactly where you stand on this critical issue. So drop into the comments and let us know your thoughts as we unpack today's topic.
It is definitely a subject that divides the room. I mean, you can hardly bring it up without a heated discussion breaking out.
Exactly. And to frame our discussion today, the central question we are exploring is this: do the marginal risks of releasing dual-use foundation models with widely available weights outweigh the benefits for global innovation and national security?
Right. And we're drawing this discussion from a fantastic collection of recent research. We will be diving into the Bad Llama experiment, the NTIA, that's the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, their report on dual-use models, biosecurity risk assessments from the IJRT, and the strategic analyses of global AI competition, particularly the sudden rise of foreign models like DeepSeek.
I will be arguing that open source AI is inherently dangerous. Releasing irreversible model weights allows malicious actors to trivially bypass safety fine-tuning. And, well, that introduces unacceptable risks to public safety.
And I take the opposing view. I argue that open source AI is a national security and innovation imperative. We really have to look at this through the lens of marginal risk. The dangers of open models are, in my view, frequently overstated when you compare them to existing technologies. In fact, maintaining openness is vital for defensive research and for preventing adversarial dominance in the global tech ecosystem.
Let's start right at the architecture of these models, because that is where the vulnerability actually lies. When a developer releases the weights of a foundation model, they essentially surrender all control over its downstream use.
Just to ground that for everyone listening, when we say weights, we are basically talking about the core brain of the AI, right? It's the underlying mathematical parameters and the connections the model learned during its massive pre-training phase.
Exactly. Once you release those weights, you are handing over the keys to the castle. We have empirical proof of how fragile safety is in this paradigm through the Bad Llama study. Consider the sheer asymmetry of effort here. Meta spent roughly $5 million and utilized over 3.3 million GPU hours to build Llama 2 Chat. They hired over 350 people specifically to safety tune that model.
Right. They use highly intensive techniques, supervised safety fine-tuning, safety context distillation, basically hard-coding the model to refuse dangerous prompts.
Yes, and they also used reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF. That involves thousands of hours of humans manually ranking AI responses to teach it to be, helpful but harmless. So $5 million and an army of experts to build the lock. Yet in the Bad Llama experiment, researchers were able to completely undo all of that safety training for less than $200.
The asymmetry there is striking, I will admit.
The results are chilling. They ran the model through the Advench benchmark, which is a standard test of a model's willingness to fulfill harmful instructions. The original lockdown Llama 2 Chat had a refusal rate of over 98%. It was incredibly secure. But the Bad Llama derivative, the one tweaked for $200, it refused only 2.11% of those exact same harmful prompts. It definitively proves that safety fine-tuning is an ineffective defense mechanism when model weights are made public.
I acknowledge the vulnerabilities you're pointing out. Bad Llama is a fascinating paper, but we really must frame this issue through the analytical lens of marginal risk, which is the cornerstone of the NTIA report we are looking at.
How do you define marginal risk in this context, though?
It is about the delta. The crucial question is not whether open models can be misused. Obviously they can. But whether they actually increase the risk landscape relative to pre-existing technologies. We have to compare an unrestricted AI not to a perfect safe world, but to a world that already has Google, the dark web, and specialized search engines.
But a search engine retrieves existing information. An AI generates novel pathways.
True, but we also cannot pretend that closed, proprietary models are perfectly secure either. Studies have repeatedly shown that closed models are highly susceptible to jailbreaks and adversarial attacks. Researchers have successfully removed RLHF protections via APIs on proprietary models, proving that locking down the weights on a server somewhere is not a silver bullet for safety.
There is a massive structural difference, though. With an API jailbreak, the developer can patch the vulnerability on their server the next day. If the weights are on my local laptop, no one can patch it.
Which brings up the national security argument emphasized in the Third Way report and the Solemn study. We are operating in a global battleground. Chinese open-source models, like DeepSeek R1, have completely disrupted Western dominance. DeepSeek achieves reasoning performance comparable to OpenAI's top-tier models, excelling in math and coding. If the United States restricts open-source AI because of the fears you are outlining, we risk ceding the global developer ecosystem entirely to models shaped by adversarial interests.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on the reality of defending against these models. There is a profound asymmetry between offense and defense when the weights are open. Let's look at content provenance and watermarking.
Watermarking being the invisible digital signatures developers embed in AI outputs so we can trace where an image or text came from.
Precisely. Policymakers rely heavily on watermarking to trace AI-generated content, but the Stanford CFRM brief makes it abundantly clear watermarking methods simply do not persist if an open model is fine-tuned. Because the weights are available locally, malicious actors can easily write a script to strip those watermarks out. It renders all provenance techniques useless.
The Stanford study does highlight the fragility of current watermarking, yes.
And the real-world consequence is severe. The barrier to generating deeply harmful content, specifically things like child sexual abuse material or non-consensual intimate imagery, is substantially lowered by open text-to-image models. With a closed model, the developer has visibility. They can monitor outputs, block malicious prompts, and ban users who violate terms of service. With an open model, the developer has absolutely zero visibility into what is being generated on a local machine. The defensive mechanisms are fundamentally broken by the architecture itself.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. The NTIA report specifically addresses this exact concern. No one is denying that the generation of highly illicit imagery is a severe issue. But the NTIA suggests that attempting to control the math, the foundation model itself, is the wrong layer of intervention. The most effective policy choke points are actually downstream.
Downstream meaning the platforms where the content is shared?
Exactly. The hosting intermediaries, the social media networks, the payment processors, that is where you filter and restrict. Furthermore, your argument about defense ignores the critical defensive benefits of open weights.
I don't see how handing offensive capabilities to everyone acts as a defense.
Because having open weights allows for white box auditing by independent researchers. If the broader scientific community doesn't have deep, unrestricted access to the model's architecture, they cannot find systemic vulnerabilities and patch them. This open ecosystem is exactly what allows us to create robust cyber defense tools.
Can you give an example from the research?
Look at Security BERT. It is a privacy-preserving cyber threat detection model built by fine-tuning open foundation models. Institutions and businesses can use these customized open models to process highly sensitive data locally. They can detect network intrusions without having to send their private, proprietary data over the internet to a third-party API. Openness is the very engine of our cybersecurity defense.
But that defense relies entirely on the assumption that the harms are purely digital and can be patched or moderated downstream. You mentioned intervening at the platform level. Let's move to the physical world, specifically the reality of CBRN threats: chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear.
The ultimate high-stakes arena.
Absolutely. The IJIRT study issues a dire warning about the black box problem of AI-generated biological outputs. We are not just talking about generating a phishing email or a deep fake image that you can catch on a social media platform. We are talking about synthetic biology.
The dual-use dilemma.
Yes. Generative models can autonomously propose complex, novel genetic blueprints with minimal human intervention. They have ingested vast databases of pathogen genomes. They can synthesize disparate pieces of information that no single human expert could easily cross-reference.
But they are still just predicting text.
Text that represents biological reality. When you strip the guardrails off an open model, which, as we established with Bad Llama, takes mere hours and a couple of $100, it becomes an untraceable lab assistant. It's like having a master chemist in your basement who never sleeps and answers every query. Rogue states or bioterrorists no longer need a team of highly specialized PhDs to overcome knowledge barriers in synthetic biology. They just need an unrestricted open-source large language model. You cannot moderate a biological weapon downstream once the pathogen is synthesized in a lab.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered the actual real-world bottlenecks of CBRN development?
You mean the NTIA's take on this?
Yes. The NTIA report provides a very grounded, sobering analysis of this exact fear. Much of the dual-use information regarding pathogens and chemical agents is already freely available. It is on Wikipedia. It is published by the National Academies of Sciences.
There is a big difference between raw data on Wikipedia and an AI actively troubleshooting a synthesis protocol for you in real time.
There is, but an open AI model is not providing classified magic. Crucially, the NTIA points out that the real barrier to creating a bioweapon is not access to theoretical genetic blueprints. The blueprint is the easy part.
And the hard part?
The physical world. Pathogens require physical laboratories. They require highly specialized, tracked equipment like advanced centrifuges and bioreactors. They require controlled environments and, most importantly, real-world hands-on expertise to synthesize and stabilize a virus so it doesn't just die in the petri dish. You cannot print a virus on a standard laptop.
I don't think anyone is claiming the laptop literally prints the virus.
But the fear assumes the AI removes the primary obstacle. It doesn't. The open AI model does not remove the physical bottleneck of creating a weapon. Therefore, going back to marginal risk, the actual increase in danger specifically attributable to the open model versus existing search engines is heavily overstated.
I disagree that the marginal risk is overstated when we look at how these models interact with existing geopolitical frameworks. Let's look at the military and strategic level. Releasing open models directly undercuts U.S. national security strategy, specifically our chip export controls.
The restrictions on sending advanced GPUs to certain countries.
Exactly. The United States has enacted strict export controls on advanced semiconductors. The entire goal is to prevent countries of concern from building massive supercomputers to train their own cutting-edge AI for military applications. But what happens when we simply open source the weights of our most advanced models?
They get access to the software without needing the hardware to build it.
Precisely. Those countries no longer need the massive computational hardware required for pre-training. They can simply download the finished product. They can take U.S.-developed model weights and integrate them directly into military and intelligence applications.
Such as
Things like combat simulation, real-time signal jamming analysis, or coordinating autonomous drone swarms. We are effectively handing over the fruits of our technological labor. We are allowing adversaries to bypass billions of dollars of required infrastructure investment and years of trial and error.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. The idea that we can contain this technology by keeping it closed is an illusion. The cat is already out of the bag.
You are referring to the Salem study on DeepSeek?
Exactly. Look at the data there. This Chinese startup trained its highly capable V3 and R1 models with far fewer resources than their American competitors. They bypassed traditional supervised fine-tuning bottlenecks entirely. They utilized highly efficient reinforcement learning algorithms and achieved top-tier reasoning capabilities.
Which proves they are advancing quickly.
Which proves they didn't need our open weights to catch up. They innovated their own highly efficient training methods. If the U.S. bans or severely restricts open-source AI out of fear, for example, through proposed legislation like California's SB 1047, which would impose strict downstream liability on developers, it doesn't stop foreign adversaries. It only hinders our own domestic innovators.
But SB 1047 and similar frameworks are designed to ensure developers test for catastrophic risks before releasing models into the wild.
But in practice, strict liability means small players, academic researchers, and startups can't afford the legal risk of releasing open models. By stifling open source domestically, we push the global developer community toward foreign models. We risk creating an algorithm monoculture dominated by adversarial tech. We strengthen our alliances and maintain our technological supremacy precisely by fostering an open, dynamic global ecosystem.
As we draw this discussion to a close, I want to summarize the core of my position based on the material we've reviewed. While democratizing technology and fostering an open ecosystem are undoubtedly noble goals, we cannot ignore the empirical evidence in front of us.
The Bad Llama findings.
Yes, the Bad Llama experiment undeniably proves that current safety mechanisms are fundamentally incompatible with widely available model weights. Because pre-training costs millions and undoing safety fine-tuning costs mere dollars, bad actors have a permanent structural advantage in an open weights paradigm.
You see it as a flaw in the architecture itself.
It is an unpatchable vulnerability. The potential for untraceable customized malware, bioweapon design assistance outlined by the IGRT, and the undercutting of our chip export controls presents a level of risk that simply cannot be brushed aside. We cannot rely entirely on the hope that physical bottlenecks or downstream platform moderation will always prevent digital knowledge from manifesting as real-world harm. The stakes for global security are simply too high.
And my final thought is this. The marginal risks of OpenAI must always be measured against existing threats and the broader geopolitical reality. The information to do harm already exists in the world, and as we've seen, closed models are not immune to exploitation through API jailbreaks.
But they offer a line of defense.
A fragile one. Stifling open-source AI through heavy-handed regulation does not eliminate bad actors from the world. Instead, it merely hands the keys of the future global tech ecosystem to foreign adversaries who are advancing rapidly, as the data on DeepSeek clearly shows. Furthermore, closing models blinds our own independent safety researchers who desperately need open weights to develop the very cyber defenses and audits that will keep us safe. Openness is our greatest strategic advantage, and we must not abandon it out of fear.
We both clearly acknowledge the profound power of these foundation models. They represent a paradigm shift in human technology. The complexity of governing an easily modified, dual-use technology like this is staggering. I think we both agree that the debate over how to secure AI without stifling its immense potential is far from settled.
Absolutely. It is a defining technical and strategic challenge of our time. The balance between rapid innovation and necessary security will require constant recalibration and rigorous testing.
We want to encourage all of our listeners to draw their own conclusions on this critical issue. Please invite your friends, jump into the comments, and continue the discussion with us. If you want to dive deeper, the source material we referenced today, from the NTIA report on marginal risk to the IGI biosecurity analysis, contains incredible depth for those looking to explore further. Thank you for joining us,